When researching books to read for this book report, I wanted to pick a book written by women for women about how they succeeded in business. I didn't want to read about a man and how he worked really hard and had an aggressive attitude, and that's how he got to the top. So I chose a book called Darling, You Can't Do Both and Other Noise to Ignore on Your Way Up by Janet Kestin and Nancy Vonk. They're successful women in the advertising industry. They came up with the Dove litmus test commercial. I think a great quote from the book that kind of sums up why I wanted to read a book by women and for women is, we've struggled with many of the issues commonly faced by women in the workplace: poor self-esteem, missed networking opportunities, gender bias, the chronic guilt and exhaustion of balancing career and kids. These are all things that women deal with. Maybe not all of them deal with all of these issues, but we all deal with some of them at least. And that's why I chose this book. So what I did is I took what I learned from the book and I interviewed 3 women I know in business and asked them questions from the book to see what their experiences in business have been and how they've worked to become the successful women they are today. The first woman I interviewed was Debbie Carver, the Region Vice President for Higher Education Sales at Oracle. And a question I picked for her was, what is something you have a no trespassing sign on? Is there a day of week or a regular thing that you ignore work for no matter what? So this means, is there a piece of time that she blocks off completely? And this was her answer.
So I thought about this question. That's a hard question. So initially my thought was, I don't have a hard fast rule, which is terrible. However, I would say that sleep, when I decide to go to sleep, it might be midnight or it might be 1 a.m. depending on what we're doing. I try very hard to not engage in text messages that might be coming in. And there was a period of time in my life that I would say, okay, I'm going to bed at 10. I'm going to set my alarm for midnight because there might be some important message that's coming through. So I have stopped that. So I would say that's probably
Sleep.
For me.
It's like the most regular thing. It's just like... The next woman I interviewed is Juliette Williams, who is a strategic account manager for higher education sales, also at Oracle. I asked her, what if you stopped thinking of time for yourself as a luxury? And that's a direct question from the book. I think this is really important for women because I feel like a lot of us look at time to ourselves and time to do something that we enjoy absolutely as a luxury. So this was her response.
Who is a mother or has other people that depend upon her, it tends to be kind of at the forefront and your career gets put in the back. So when I had young children, the children were first. And then now that I have a career and my children are grown, the career seems to come first. So having that, and having that time for myself where I shut down and I go inside my head is so critically important for me. A lot of times it has to do with reading or even watching certain movies that I can turn my brain off, or going in the garage and doing my table building silly thing that I do. So, I've kind of come to, in my older age, I guess once I've gotten out of being a full-time mom and being a full-time career person, it's not a luxury, it's an absolute necessity. Because
the last woman I interviewed is Katie Doviak, who is a sales manager at Target X. I asked her, you've had 2 kids while having a successful career. Was there ever a time you felt you couldn't do both, or someone told you that you couldn't do both? I feel like Katie really experienced the dichotomy between family and business, having 2 young kids while she was leading a successful career. So this was her response.
I would have to say, absolutely. I've had lots of people in my career that have told me I couldn't do both, but more so that I didn't need to do both. I think what's important though, and why I've been successful in my career and successful also as a wife, as a mother, is because I had just as many people I surrounded myself with telling me that I could do it. So it's important to, you're going to have the people that will tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and you have to take a little bit of each of those. You take the ones that tell you you can't do it and let that be motivation for you to do it, and you lean on the support system that tells you you can do anything you want to.
After hearing all three women's responses, I wanted to end with a quote from the book. Excellence is worth striving for, but perfection isn't all it's cracked up to be. I think that's something that everybody, not only women, but especially women, need to remember when we are trying to achieve things in our business, whether that be physical therapy, whether that be sales, advertising, any industry that you're in. I think it's so important to find your own way to be successful. And I think this book and this interview has really shown me what it means to be a woman in business, and that anyone can do both.